Good morning. It is Wednesday, August the 7th, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much, and this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. So my podcast, The Drill, is about how to defeat the left always, every day, all the time. My podcast is made possible by Spreaker.com. It can be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and YouTube, and my email address is storytimes@hotmail.com. I'm on Twitter at Ronald Hardgrove and on Facebook at The Drill. I started my socio-political odyssey as a conservative Republican, and I was taught by the left that being a conservative is about where you stand on the issues. Stand on one side of the issues, you're conservative. If you're on the other side, you're a liberal or a lefty. And it sounded reasonable, and everybody else seemed to be playing that game. All the William F. Buckley, etc., everybody seemed to define themselves by where they stood on the issues. So who was I to say otherwise? Who was I to say boo to that? So I became a conservative Republican. Now, I realized that whenever I engaged a liberal in debate, I couldn't win. I didn't always lose, but I couldn't win. And I found that very frustrating. Why is it that I'm not able to win if this setup, this idea that you are who you are based on where you stand on the issues, is done fairly? So the only logical conclusion I could draw at that particular point was that this standard was not fair, that the standard of where one stood on the issues was slanted in favor of the left, that the issues were issues that were picked by the left for the left. So, is there any way for a conservative to win? Yes, but you have to do it by redefining what it means to be conservative and by redefining the issues and becoming a true conservative. And by being a true conservative, I will not only win, I will never lose. And again, the purpose of my podcast is to demonstrate how to defeat the left each and every day. So what I'm going to be talking about today is first of all, I'm going to be discussing, touching on the shootings that happened over the weekend again, and explaining how it relates to the left's war on reality. And then I'm going to go to an article in AMAC, the current issue of AMAC magazine, titled "Time to Reconsider and Legally Scrap Sanctuary Cities." And then I'm going to go to read a little bit from chapter 1 of a book that's called "Government Against Itself," and it's about one of the true conservative issues, which is the abolition of public employee unions. And that's when I come back. All right, thank you very much. Welcome back. And shootings and reality. I was listening to the Hugh Hewitt show this morning, and they were talking about the shooters, and he was opening up the phone lines because he wants to play the shape reality game. He doesn't know that that's what he's doing, but it is what he's doing. The left is always operating on a very subtle level. When you'll hear lefties talk about subtlety and nuance, they mean it. What they want to do is get in your psyche. The purpose of getting in your psyche is to get you to want socialism. Because if you want socialism, the rest of it's a breeze. The rest of it's easy. One of the ways they do this is by trying to, quote, shape reality. They come up with this theory, an idea in which they proclaim that reality is merely an arbitrary construct, and that reality actually consists of public opinion, and that reality is therefore whatever the majority says it is, and that people can be leaders and change agents. They can shape reality, particularly news people and news agencies. That's why CNN does what it does. That's why MSNBC does what it does, hammering Donald Trump each and every day. They're blatantly anti-Trump, anti-Republican, and they make no effort to disguise it. And what they're trying to do is shape reality. They believe that they are people that shape opinion, and through shaping opinion, they shape reality. It's false. It's BS. Donald Trump is proof, absolute proof, that there is no such thing as shaping reality. Part of this idea of shaping reality is what they're basically doing is denying the existence of metaphysical reality. That's a kind of reality that we have no control over, such as the weather. You and I cannot control the weather. The weather is a metaphysical reality. Climate is a metaphysical reality. We don't control it. The left won't concede that. The left claims everything is within man's control. And again, Donald Trump proved that they were full of crap. But as far as the shootings are concerned, here you are, you're an average person, and you're getting all these reality-shaping messages from the news media. You're getting it also from television shows, Law and Order and other such programs and shows. Isn't it logical to figure that somebody's going to get the idea, wait a minute, if people on the news can shape reality by simply sitting in front of a camera and talking, or somebody can shape reality by getting on the radio and talking, why can't I shape reality at the point of a gun? Right? I'm going to go out and I'm going to murder dozens of people and thereby shape reality. So you got to remember that it's not just, this isn't a phenomenon strictly of people on the right, although the left wants everybody to think so. Right? They want to shape that reality. They want to be able to say, well, these shooters are all disgruntled conservatives, when in reality, at least half of them are disgruntled lefties. There was a shooting in the park in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago in which a bunch of Republicans that were playing a softball game were shot and wounded, and the shooter turned out to be a Bernie Sanders supporter. So it goes both directions. But again, here they are shaping reality. So if you want to get rid of mass shootings, you're going to have to get with reality. You're going to have to, as a conservative, promote what's real instead of looking to go out and gather support from friends and relatives to determine what it is that's real. You're going to have to make that determination on your own. It's like I said with a friend of mine where he was wondering whether or not he made the right decision in not marrying a particular woman. And I told him flat out, I said, yeah, you made the right decision. I told him why, as a matter of reality. Not as a matter of simply opinion, but as a matter of reality. And he told me something very interesting. He said that I was the only person, because he'd asked the same question to many of his friends. He was out, doing polls and surveys to trying to find out what's real and what's going on. He said I was the only one that gave him a straight answer. I was the only person to give him a straight answer. And you probably find that in your own lives. How many times do you struggle with a problem, and so you do some informal surveying and polling, and you call your friends and your relatives, and you get the same problem, is that you get a bunch of mealy-mouthed BS instead of getting straight answers. And that's because people are afraid to acknowledge reality. And as a true conservative, you must not be afraid to acknowledge reality, and you must promote it. And through the promotion of reality as objectivity, then we'll get to the point where people will not find it necessary to try to shape reality either on television or at the point of a gun. So when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the article in the current issue of AMAC magazine, Time to Reconsider and Legally Scrap Sanctuary Cities. Thank you very much, and welcome back. And from this issue of AMAC Magazine, AMAC being the Association of Mature American Citizens, an article I thought would be very interesting, and that is time to reconsider and legally scrap sanctuary cities. And I'm considering it as a true conservative issue, sanctuary cities and scrapping thereof, but we'll see. So from the magazine, too often these days politics infects rational thought, sidelines common sense, an amalgam of logic, evidence, experience, and history, intimidates good people from doing what is right, and throws the policy process off track. Sanctuary cities are a splendid case in point. They make no sense, and we should say so. Sanctuary cities are euphemistically defined as municipal jurisdictions that, quote, limit their cooperation with the national government's effort to enforce immigration laws, unquote. Defended by leading Democratic lawmakers, they say such harbors for illegality, quote, reduce fear of deportation, quote, for those, quote, in the country illegally, unquote. This much they do. Having achieved this aim, these sanctuary cities then can get to work, often asking state and federal reimbursement, providing social services to endemically poor, often sick, generally undereducated, unemployed, and often criminally affiliated populations of foreigners illegally in the United States. Never mind that inherently scarce social, medical, educational, employment, public health, and safety services are spread thinner in these cities, disadvantaging American citizens as leading sanctuary cities become expanding repositories for illegality, homelessness, and bases for illegal aliens. The burden is actually much higher and unlikely to be sustainable over time, whether the motivation is a humanitarian attempt to accommodate the unexpected arrival of foreign indigents, although some cities seem to invite them, or to surreptitiously swell illegal voting. Motivation is becoming secondary. Illegal aliens are swelling these sanctuary cities, and bearing that burden is changing the social, economic, political, security, and livability fabric of these cities. Examples are illustrative. The top states with sanctuary cities or counties include California, Oregon, Washington, Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, Maryland, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, and Virginia. Iowa sounds like a bit of a surprise to me. Back to the article. The 168 cities and counties in these states that claim sanctuary status are almost entirely Democratic by political persuasion and are experiencing elevated levels of homelessness, together with mounting public health and safety challenges, including widespread drug abuse, tent cities, expansive poverty, infrastructure breakdown, diminished education and access issues, and public space, overrun parks problems. Numbers tell the story. The top 10 cities in America for homelessness are also the leading sanctuary cities, except for San Jose, which is a sanctuary county and state, and after a high-profile murder by an illegal alien is trying to escape the sanctuary status. Specifically, the top homeless number is held by New York City, the sanctuary city with 77,000 homeless. Next is Los Angeles, a sanctuary city managing 55,000 homeless. Then Seattle, a sanctuary city with 12,000 homeless. San Diego has 9,000 homeless. And other leading sanctuary cities are the District of Columbia, 7,000, San Jose, 7,000, San Francisco, 6,000, Las Vegas, 6,000, Boston, 6,000, and Philadelphia, 6,000. The reality is hard to deny, and the future without some change of policy seems genuinely daunting. The number of illegal aliens entering the U.S. topped 100,000 in March, again in April, and hit 132,000 in May. Whether Customs and Border Protection patrols try to hide this flood at the border or seek to ship more illegal aliens to sanctuary cities, the prognosis is not good for civic life without a rethink. For example, notably, while some studies minimize ties between sanctuary cities, homelessness, and high crime, they're suspect. Beyond possible political motivations such as fostering dependence on the state and bulking up Democratic voter rolls, there are methodological issues with these studies. For example, comparisons of violent and property crime in sanctuary and neighboring non-sanctuary cities miss key facts. Law enforcement confirms, for example, many illegal aliens commit crimes outside sanctuary cities, then dash back for refuge. Comparing neighboring cities, you don't see the difference because high crime in both tied to illegal alien presence skews the data. Likewise, some compare jurisdictions but consciously overlook differences in size, social services, law enforcement, and other material factors. They also fail to address the heinous nature of many crimes, publicly reported, committed by illegal aliens. Finding this data and tracing it back to elevated illegal alien numbers is not hard. So, to what does all this vector? A national rethink. First, the federal departments of Homeland Security and Justice, especially Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Customs and Border Protection, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and Federal Bureau of Investigation, within their statutory rights, should begin more aggressively to target these rogue cities and counties. Why? Because the impact of federal agencies looking the other way, folding to local prerogatives, is dangerous. Fundamentally, it sets a bad precedent for federal law enforcement. Moreover, it increasingly endangers innocent, law-abiding citizens in contiguous cities, counties, and states. As public health and safety issues widen with illegal populations, there's a growing need to overlook an insistence on cooperation with federal law enforcement agencies. Secondly, Congress needs to own this crisis and reverse it. That means stopping illegal aliens at the border and also putting a stop to hemorrhaging federal taxpayer dollars to bail out jurisdictions inviting illegality at best or indulging political games and chicanery at the worst. Deterrence at the border, and thus American public security, is undermined by jurisdictions which other illegal aliens a hiding place, offer illegal aliens a hiding place from the rule of law. Finally, leadership in these counties and cities needs to wake up and smell the coffee. This strategy for winning elections, if the idea is to create dependence, then leverage dependence for votes, illegal or illegal, is a loser. The endgame undercuts public budgets, the rule of law, democracy, and public security, availability of health care, housing, employment, and safe recreation, all the while draining resources to which citizens have a right while redirecting state and federal dollars away from them to illegal aliens. Is this all right? Is all this right? Morally, legally, politically, historically? In a word, no. That is why, with a sense of fidelity to American citizens and America's citizens and promise to legal immigrants and the constitutional history of abiding by laws we pass, the whole sanctuary city gambit needs to be reconsidered and scrapped. We are either a country of laws or we are not, and we should be. So one of the reasons I like this article is because they come out and they make value judgments. The very ending paragraph, we're either a country of laws or we are not, and we should be. And that's excellent, because then you're making a point. Otherwise, you're just blathering, and there's no reason for anyone to really pay attention or remember what it is that you say. In the beginning paragraph, sanctuary cities are a splendid case in point. They make no sense. Making a value judgment, and we should say so. Use the S word. This is what should happen or shouldn't happen. One of the things that he's missing, though, is a little bit of the history of illegal immigration. For a long time, we turned a blind eye to illegal immigration in this country that comes up particularly from Mexico, because it was disorganized. You had a few families here, a few families there that would sneak across the border and get lost in the United States, and we kind of, as the average citizen would kind of shrug the shoulders, okay, they're here for a better life, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. But now what's different is you're looking at, again, the numbers of people that are coming over the borders, and it's unbelievable. The tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are coming over the border. And the reason that you have that many is because it's now organized, that the cartels are running this. The cartels are out actively beating the bushes looking for people to smuggle into the United States, because decades ago they figured out that this is a profitable enterprise for them. They can charge $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per person to take these folks, smuggle them into the United States, and get them set up and working. So the fact that it's organized, again, is what makes this issue particularly sensitive, particularly important or urgent. And that's one of the things that has to be addressed, especially with Mexico, getting the Mexicans, because it's way out of control in Mexico with the drug cartels. Bad enough that these cartels are smuggling drugs into the country. Now they're going to start smuggling illegal aliens, and they don't care as long as people pay. They're not going to check and make sure that they're not smuggling terrorists into the United States. So there's a particular sense of urgency that needs to go along with it. Now, one of the things also about sanctuary cities, I liked when President Trump said, hey, I got a great idea. Since we got all these people are flooding into the country, where are we going to put them? Well, the sanctuary cities claim to welcome these people and want to welcome them with open arms. I'm going to go ahead and send them to these sanctuary cities. Now, I don't know at this particular point whether he is doing that or has done it. If he isn't, he should be. Again, every action has consequences. That's part of metaphysical reality. You want to be a sanctuary city, then you go ahead and put up with all of the problems associated with illegal aliens. Why should the rest of the country pay for your outrageous attitude? Your flaunting and defiance of the law. There's no reason for anybody in, Missouri, for instance, to put up with illegal aliens simply because the mayor of Los Angeles has gone ahead and declared Los Angeles to be a sanctuary city. I also wanted to note that sanctuary cities is based on the idea, and again, it's more of a tradition, it's not really a law, but of churches being sanctuaries. So that if you're a fugitive and you're on the run, the idea is you can go to a church and you can stay in the church as long as the church members will allow you to stay, and that law enforcement will not come into that church, break into that church to arrest you. So that's the whole idea of being a sanctuary. So, but again, if the cities want to be sanctuary cities, then it's time to put up or shut up. One of the things also about illegal aliens and the costs, because they touched on in this article the costs in terms of medical care, is, and they alluded to the fact that a lot of these cities and states and counties want to get the federal government to pick up the tab. And that's one of the proposals that's been floated in the state of California for universal health care. The governor is pushing an idea of a single payer in the state of California, and to include some, not all, but some people that are here illegally, illegal aliens. And a lot of folks are scratching their head thinking that's absolutely insane, because the cost of that program is going to skyrocket. But it's not insane. It's crazy like a fox. Because what he's going to do is, once they get single payer set up in this state, is he is going to go to the federal government and he's going to present them with a bill. He's going to say, guess what? You get to pay for the health care that California is providing for the illegal aliens. And that you're going to pay for this health care because it's your responsibility to make sure they didn't get here in the first place. And since your efforts failed, since you don't have control of the borders, there's no reason for California to have to pay for your mistakes. So you should pay the bill. I would imagine that the current administration, the Trump administration, will fight it as they should. It is whether or not the federal government has failed in its mission to keep illegal aliens out, that doesn't mean that the state of California or any other state has the right to bait and attract people, wave this little cookie, so to speak, and say, come to California and you'll get free health care, and thereby attract more illegal aliens, thereby putting more pressure on the border. Plus, the state of California has done everything it possibly can, the state, cities, and counties, to frustrate and thwart the efforts of the federal government to prevent illegal aliens from getting into the country. So there's at least two good reasons why that idea should be shot down, not only by the administration, but also in court. So when I come back, I'm going to be reading from Government Against Itself about one of the true conservative issues, which is the corruption of public employee unions and having them go back to being public servants. Thank you very much. Welcome back. And Government Against Itself, and the first chapter is called The Battle Over Collective Bargaining in Government. And this is a quote, "Meticulous attention should be paid to the special relations and obligations of public servants to the public itself and to the government. The process of collective bargaining, as usually understood, cannot be transplanted into the public service." That's unquote from President Franklin D. Roosevelt. "It is impossible to bargain collectively with the government." And that's a quote from AFL-CIO President George Meany. "When one thinks of millionaires, one usually thinks of corporate executives, real estate moguls, high-profile lawyers, tech wizards, professional athletes, and investment bankers. One does not think of police officers, firefighters, or school teachers. Yet public employees are one of the fastest-growing groups of millionaires in the country, and this isn't just because $1 million isn't what it used to be. Today, upon retirement in their mid-50s, cops, firefighters, and teachers will be paid handsome pensions and receive health care coverage until they die. If one calculates the value of their net worth to include their retirement packages, many have already become millionaires. Indeed, those who spend their entire careers in public service are often among the highest earners. Among the highest earners in their states upon retirement. 8 states pay on average over $1 million in pension benefits to a retired worker, and 23 states pay about $750,000 or more over the course of a worker's retirement. Take the case of Glenn Goss. At the age of 21, Goss joined the police force in Delray Beach, Florida. In 2005, he retired at the age of 42. After 20 years on the job, he had achieved the rank of commander, and his final salary was $90,000 a year. Upon retirement, he began to receive a $65,000 annual pension, which is guaranteed for life and indexed for inflation. His retirement package also includes a health care plan worth approximately $10,000 a year. If one considers that male life expectancy in the United States is approaching 80 years, Goss will be receiving his pension and health benefits for another 38 years. Still in his 40s and in good health, Goss decided to return to work, even after he's officially retired. Rather than launch a new career, however, he went back to police work in Highland Beach, a neighboring community from where he used to work. The job he took was nearly identical in terms of salary and benefits to the one he left. This practice is commonly referred to as double dipping. Put it all together, and an estimation of his current net worth is $2 million. As another example, look at the arrangement that Michael Hirth has secured, a 55-year-old fireman in Hallandale Beach, Florida. He participates in a deferred retirement option program. It allows him to retire but continue working. Under this program, Hirth receives his pension and salary simultaneously. He can also direct pension dollars into a fund that guarantees an 8% annual return, year after year. If the fund doesn't perform to that benchmark, the state of Florida, and ultimately its taxpayers, is on the hook for the difference. Finally, consider the case of Joe Smith, a gym teacher and longtime football coach at Addison Trail High School in DuPage County, Illinois. He earned more than $184,000 in the 2008-9 school year. Under contractual provisions, his 35 years of teaching experience and master's degree boosted his salary. Now retired, he enjoys full pension and health care benefits. Stories of such lavish compensation might make readers indignant. A personal favorite is the lifeguard in Newport Beach, California, who retired at 51 years old with a $108,000 a year pension. For many people struggling in the private sector, to say nothing of the unemployed, these arrangements appear outrageously inequitable, especially since these same workers are footing the bill for public employees through their tax dollars. During the Great Recession, government employees became the envy of many workers toiling in the regular economy, where the average salary hovers around $51,000 a year and benefits are much less generous, if workers have them at all. Indeed, the job security, pension, and health benefits and work schedules that most public employees enjoy are things that most private sector workers can only dream about. And these differences from the private economy are not altogether new. One journalist remarked 30 years ago that, quote, altogether, public employment is one sweet deal. Generous pay and benefits, lifetime job security, meaningless performance evaluations, and, last but not least, protection from all the swings of fortune that affect workers in private industry. Yet, unquote, yet facile indignation about such inequities is not the most important thing about these examples. By all accounts, Glenn Goss is a decent cop. Michael Hirth is a competent fireman, and Joe Smith a dedicated teacher. And they are far from our best rewarded public servants. Pointing out their levels of compensation is not intended to attack these people personally or public employees generally. Government workers are hugely important. They put out fires, ensure our safety, teach our children. We want good, well-qualified people doing these jobs. The difficulties stem from the fact that there are millions of similarly compensated public employees across the country. Government employment accounts for more than 20.3 million jobs, 17% of total U.S. employment, with the vast majority of these jobs in state and local governments. The focus of this book is therefore more on the latter than the former, because that is largely where the action is. In addition, the scope of collective bargaining in the federal government is much more limited than it is in most state and local governments where it is practiced. The aggregate cost of public employee compensation, including pay, pension, and health care, has contributed mightily to creating a fiscal burden that threatens to weaken state and local government across the country. The best current estimates of the unfunded pension liability for state and local government is around $3.2 trillion, or approximately 21% of total U.S. gross domestic product. And that doesn't include health care liabilities, which are harder to estimate, but probably add another trillion, which by itself is equal to about 1/3 of the state and local government revenue. Furthermore, the rate at which government workers are retiring is faster than the rate at which people are retiring in the private sector. By 2030, the number of retired public workers will equal the number of people employed by state and local government. Therefore, state and local governments are allocating larger shares of their budgets to retirement benefits, pension, and health care to their past and current employees. And even as state and local government jobs have declined by some 671,000 positions since 2009, spending by state and local governments has increased by $200 billion. As expenditures on benefits increase, they crowd out government spending on parks, education, public safety, and other services which the poor and middle class rely. In short, government costs more but does less. What contributed to creating this situation? There are, of course, many explanations, but the most important is that Goss, Hirth, and Smith all belong to unions. More specifically, they belong to public employee unions. These unions have been particularly adept due to the advantages they enjoy over other interest groups in securing better pay, benefits, and job protection for their members. And many of these items are connected, since salary increases translate into higher pension liabilities. Pursuing their interests in politics and at the bargaining table has often translated into Samuel L. Gomper's favorite labor dictum, quote, more, unquote. Clearly, that's great for our public servants. However, it's not so good for everyone else. The problem with unions in the public sector is that in order to serve the interests of their members, they hamstring government's ability to address social problems, reduce inequality, and enhance social cohesion. As James Madison remarked long ago, quote, the great desideratum in government is such a modification of sovereignty as will render it sufficiently neutral between the different interests and factions, and at the same time sufficiently controlled itself from setting up an interest adverse to that of the whole society, unquote. Unfortunately, public sector unions constitute such an adverse interest. Too often, the pursuit of their interest compromises the public's interest in low-cost but highly productive government that sensibly allocates scarce resources. It is for these reasons that Franklin Roosevelt and George Meany, both great champions of organized labor, opposed collective bargaining with unionized government workers. Both were concerned about its negative implications for democratic practice, the health of public finances, and the quality of government services. The stakes involved in permitting collective bargaining and unionization in public sector labor relations, things that sound technocratic and boring, are nothing less than whether democratic politics and fiscal responsibility can ever, for very long, be combined. Organizing government employees, most of whom have nearly life tenure, into interest groups to then negotiate and lobby government, provides a motive for government to grow beyond what is required to keep up with the increases in population and to cost more than is necessary to attract and maintain a competent public workforce. Fiscal integrity is hard to maintain under such conditions, as a given level of tax revenue ends up purchasing fewer public services. Furthermore, government tends to grow in ways that do not always rebound to the benefit of citizens who rely on government services. Doing anything to counteract such trends becomes even harder in largely one-party states and cities where public sector unions are deeply intertwined with the dominant political party. In sum, the extent and proper structure of American democracy is at stake. That said, just because this book examines some of the adverse consequences of public sector unionism does not imply that there are no other threats to democratic health in the United States. Far from it. The machinations of ideological individuals, business corporations, and citizen associations with considerable political resources also present grave challenges to the public interest. An uninformed and uninterested public and a press corps obsessed with the horse race aspects of political campaigns rather than the substance of public policy present still other hazards. And people can take their pick of a long list of other problems. There's party polarization, income inequality, dysfunctional political institutions, lingering racism, and ethically challenged politicians. Readers should be concerned about them, and good books have been written on all of these topics. However, one can be critical of all these things and still believe that public sector unions are part of the full landscape of problems afflicting American politics. Accepting that public sector unions do not necessarily chime with fiscal integrity, social solidarity, and healthy democratic practice does not require one to reject other sources of American democracy's difficulties. For instance, believing public sector unions are problematic by no means precludes the belief that corporate America exercises too much power or that wealthy individuals have captured too much of the nation's wealth over the last 30 years. These claims are simply not mutually exclusive. Therefore, admitting the obvious that there are other problems with American democracy should not distract us from the study of government unions. So a couple of comments about this. First of all, he does touch on the fact where he says on what I think is the central issues about why it's wrong, when he touches on one of them, which is, he says it crowds out the money being spent on unions, crowds out money being used for the services the government is supposed to provide. Where he's missing it is that what these unions are doing, and the dynamic of this is that if you work for a business and you work for, let's say, Amazon has a really good year, right? And let's say you're renegotiating your contract every year. So this year, Amazon had a really good year. Their profits were up. Everything was up, let's say, 30%. And you go back to Amazon and say, hey, we the unions, we want a cut of that. You made an extra profit. You did extra well. We contributed to it. We should get a piece of that. Okay? In a city, you don't have that. Cities have a limited budget. X amount of dollars are coming in revenue, and out of that revenue, they have to provide certain services. Part of that, of course, is pay and benefits for their employees. So, if as the union boss said when asked what it is that he wants for his union people, and he comes up with a one-word answer: more. And so every time that you're renegotiating a contract, you as a union person are expecting more. Then where are you going to get more if the budget of the city remains the same? The city is, again, it's not selling widgets, it's not selling services, so it can't come out and say, well, we had an extra good year, so guess what? You're going to get a bonus, or you're going to get a pay raise, or whatever. By and large, their budgets stay pretty much the same, unless there's a huge influx of people, of new residents, etc. So, how do you get more then if you're a union person? The only way to do it is to cut costs. So everything for the public employee becomes an issue of cost. And one particular example that I have of that was, again, when I was going home from work one day. I was on Broadway between 3rd and 4th in downtown LA, and a guy, I was on my motorcycle, guy makes a left turn in front of me. I end up sliding down Broadway, sprawled out in the middle of Broadway. Witnesses are attending to me and whatnot. The police officer shows up and asks me if I need an ambulance. Stupid question. I mean, come on. Just an accident, sprawled out in the middle of the street. You call an ambulance. That's what you do. Okay, the ambulance comes out, they check me out, make sure everything is okay, or tell me what's wrong, make recommendations. But that's not what happened. He wants to know if I want an ambulance. I said, I don't know, you tell me. He says, no, you tell me. He wants to argue with me about it. Why? Because he knows that rolling an ambulance costs the city money. And that money is money that could go into his pocket. When the ambulance, by the way, they did event, she did go ahead and call for the ambulance, because also the other thing they got to figure, he wouldn't have if it wasn't for the threat of a lawsuit. Okay, I think that he realized, well, if I don't do something, if I don't get an ambulance here and something goes bad, we're going to get sued. And that's even worse for the city in terms of being able to increase the pay and benefits of the people in the police department. So he rolls the ambulance. The paramedics show up. They check my blood pressure, make me sign, or didn't make me, but told me to sign a document that promises not to sue and cut me loose. That was it. And again, at the time I was kind of stunned, but I realized later, cost cutting. Cost cutting. Another example of cost cutting by the public employee unions. You call in LA County, you call for a fire truck, something's on fire, they're not going to roll one until they've gotten a second phone call. When they get a second phone call from somebody else, that's when they'll roll the trucks. And they do that because they claim that a high percentage of the calls they get are false reports. So they end up rolling their trucks out to nothing. There's no fire, there's no emergency, nothing. And then they claim it's a safety issue, but it isn't. It's a monetary issue. Every time they've got to roll the fire department somewhere, it costs the city money, if nothing else, in diesel. Okay, so again, money that could be going into the firemen's pockets. Okay, because when they're going to go and demand, they want a raise in pay, they want a raise in this, that, and the other thing, they don't want the city coming back and say, well, we don't have any money. Okay, we've used all of our funds for, to pay for diesel fuel for your trucks, for instance. They want the city to be able to say, yes, we can go ahead and give you that raise in pay. So that's an issue of conflict of interest. They're not out to serve and protect. Both fire departments and police officers have the added advantage that their work is romanticized by the public. If there's any one thing that every single true conservative in the United States of America can do, it is quit romanticizing the police and the fire department. Okay, they're not some romantic figures, dashing heroes, BS. They're civil servants. That's what they are, civil servants. And they have a job to do. They need to punch in, do their damn job, and go home. That's all it is. They're no better or worse than anyone else. But again, we have certain career fields in this country that people want to romanticize: farmers, teachers, bull. They're no different than the liquor store owner. Okay, everybody's got a job to do. Punch in, do your damn job, and go from there. The other part of this that he missed is that one of the most pernicious parts of having public employee unions is conflict of interest, because, contrary to popular opinion, it is not power that corrupts, but corruption that corrupts. And absolute corruption corrupts absolutely. The favorite example I have is when I used to work for the city of Pasadena, and I was pulled over by a Pasadena cop who was going to cite me for doing a California stop at a stop sign. In other words, I rolled through it rather than coming to a complete stop. But as soon as he saw my city ID, he said to me, "Oh, you work for the city? Have a nice day." And when I was doing parking enforcement for the city, there was a place in front of the Chamber of Commerce, and there was a sign. And this place for parking was for large vehicles that have handicapped people, basically. The ones that if you're elderly and you can't get around, or you're handicapped and you need a specific bus service to get you places, you call this service, they pick you up. And this was maybe the only place in the city where they actually had a spot reserved for these handicapped vans, right? So that's the only people that are supposed to park there. Sure enough, I'm standing right there doing my job, car pulls up in this spot. And two ladies in it. And I said, "Excuse me." And I point to the sign. And they said, "Oh, but it's okay. We're with the city." And I'm not going for this crap. I knew exactly what they meant. I'm a city employee, they're a city employee, we all work for the same union, so let it slide. Except I was actually a contractor. I had city ID, but I didn't actually work for the city directly. So I wasn't a member of the union. Even if I had been, it would have been no go. This is crap. It's like, what are they going to do next? Are they going to pull into a handicapped parking spot and deny a legitimately handicapped person a spot to park simply because they work for the city? You're out of your mind. I had to beg these women to go park somewhere else because they kept coming back with, "But we're city employees, but we're city employees." And I had to beg them literally, "Please, please, please park somewhere else." So again, we are a country that the longer we allow and do not insist that public employees go back to being public servants and have all the union contracts decertified, have all these unions decertified, the longer this goes on, the more likely we are to turn out to become the Philippines or Mexico, where we're going to be a country that is awash in corruption. We're going to expect corruption. We are going to promote corruption. Right now, we're still a country where, yes, we have certain corrupt practices going on, but by and large, each individual in the United States of America frowns on corruption. We don't like it. We think it's unnecessary. And by and large, we don't put up with it. And that's the difference between us and, say, Mexico and the Philippines, where everybody seems to think corruption is just a part of life. Everybody screws everybody all the time. No, it's not necessary, it's wrong, it's corrupt, and it must end. All public employee unions must be decertified and the employees made into civil servants immediately. And back, I guess, let me see what we're going to do here. Back in a minute. Thank you very much. Welcome back. Who are the true conservatives? They're the people that understand that conservatism is not just a political, but cultural and philosophical issue as well. They are patriotic people who use common sense. They make judgments, refuse to speculate, speak clearly and definitively, and are not afraid to say no. They are open-minded, asking why rather than why not. They are consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of their existence, unafraid to learn or correct their mistakes. In short, they are normal Americans. And that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.